Now I'm going to pass over to Mary
This is
to
the
turn
fun
the
part of
table
the
on me.
evening. Now I get to ask Denise the question. So everybody get your pens ready because there's going to be lots and lots of great tips from Denise here because Denise has got at least a decade of experience of looking at pitch decks and whatever and deciding who to invest in. So Denise, my first question, where should founders start with their fundraising journey? What is it that they need to put in place before they begin?
Yeah, so this is a question that I get asked all the time, and I normally, like you, Mary, get approached by a lot of founders who do the blank outreach and just look at the fact that I have been, running an angel investment community before, or I talk about angel investment significantly online, and people then automatically assume that I'm interested in their business. So the first thing that I always say to everybody who's about to start on this journey is to look at the angel investor. Mary talks, as many do, in their own blog, in their own content around what motivates them, what drives them, where they invest, what types of business they invest in, what their own personal investment thesis is, and be very sure that you're knowledgeable on those things before you send the investment deck, because you're just spraying and praying and hoping that some investor will pick it up and respond. So the first thing I always do is say, build a very curated hit list of those investors that you think can strategically add value to the business, but also who understand your industry sector. There is no point in sending Mary or I an investment deck with dog food, which I seem to receive dog food investment decks on a regular basis. And nowhere on my social media will you see that I have any interest in dogs. If it was, most people are very public about what motivates them and drives them, their areas of interest, and be very sure that you know both the opportunity of that they're looking to invest in, and does your business hit it, or can it hit it in the future in terms of the direction of travel that they would want to invest in. So be very sure about that. Now, you wouldn't approach a customer without understanding their investor persona. So I don't believe that you should treat an investor or an angel investment syndicate any differently. There are very, very clear personas for investors that are very widely publicized, and people talk about it all the time. But some of them that you need to be mindful of in looking for the right investor for you. So I've given them some names. So Passionate Polly would be the first angel investor persona that you should look at. And this is somebody who's got deep domain personal experience in the industry sector that you're operating in, and can add really strategic value, whether that's opening up doors for you, or getting you in front of the right people, or supporting you in networking. And they have a real passion for the industry sector that you had operated in. And then we've got Taxed Trevor. And Taxed Trevor is all about those financial incentives that Mary talks about, and will make multiple investments across multiple industries, and hedges bets in terms of building his portfolio, but is really looking for the tax relief in terms of. And we've got Friendly Frida, and Friendly Frida is very hands-on, and maybe an angel investor that you might want to be sure that you've got to know incredibly well, because they can be all about the promotion of your business, but actually not really executing against your strategy or really providing value. We've got Helpful Helen, who's got domain expertise and a good black book. We've got Sweating Simon, who's always focused on making money, right? So what I'm trying to say is that there are really strong personas around angel investors, and most of them are very explicit in what that looks like, and what their investment thesis is, and what motivates them and drive them. But Connected Charlie is another that I always you look for, who's somebody who has a really large investor network, who's really, really well connected across the startup and scale up ecosystem, and has a very impressive presence in terms of networking and the connections that they can give. So don't send your investment deck without doing your due diligence on the investor first and foremost, and getting a real understanding of what their motivations and drivers are, what the stage of business that they look at, the geographical location, the industry sectors, and understanding their personas is really, really key.
Thank you, Denise. That's a really comprehensive answer to look at that question. So obviously, an investment deck is one of the key pieces that you have in your arsenal when you're starting to raise. But what else can founders be doing? What
Yeah.
other what else should they be doing when they're starting out fundraising?
Yeah, yeah, that's really, really important, because even before you have an initial conversation with an angel investor, or that you've really honed those investor personas that you're going to target, you need to be a little bit reflective of yourself and really polish your own online presence first and foremost. Your social media profiles, especially LinkedIn, most investors will go straight there to check you out and follow up. And you need to be really, really, really explicitly showcasing your experience in the business that you've launched, your accomplishments relevant to the industry sector that you're targeting, and really make it clear what you're bringing to the table as the founder of this business. And really, I have to say, folks, really invest in professional photographs for your LinkedIn if you're fundraising. I know there's a lot of, it is the first impression that people will get when looking at your LinkedIn profile. And it's really important that you look serious and mature and investable. From that perspective, you know, having a family photograph on your LinkedIn it's not appropriate. If it's not appropriate in lots of ways from a business networking point of view on a platform such as LinkedIn. But you know, be sure that your images are consistent across your social media as well, making sure that you're easily recognizable as a thought leader in this space, and make sure that you're creating content that showcases your knowledge, your expertise in the field. Write articles, create videos, really show that you are worth the investment and worth people departing with their money, and that you can really articulate clearly to that investor what the added value that you bring as a founder to the business, not just the idea, but also the credibility behind it. And make sure that you do a Google search on yourself, folks, and clean it up if it's not clean. And it's really, really important. And obviously Lynn's here with us from a social media guru perspective tonight. You know, so if it is a case that you need help in looking at how to do that and clean it up, legacy public, you know, information or articles or information about you that will be and have a negative impact on your fundraising journey you need to be mindful of those, and also your privacy settings on various things on social media, making sure that, you know, your personal life is your personal life and your public life is your public life. But make sure that you're building a presence, you're building a thought leadership position, and ultimately be yourself. I mean, be your professional self, and where your values can shine through as well. Because at the end of the day, as Mary said, you can do all of the due diligence on an investee company, but it comes down to people buying from people and people investing in people. And it's the same things that motivate investors to actually part with their cash. So be very mindful of how you look online. But your pitch deck is an important asset, but it's not the only asset. And you need to be mindful of the other components that you need to create in targeting investors. Obviously, your investment deck is one thing, but don't send your investment deck out all the time unless it's been requested by an investor. You don't know who they're going to share it with. You don't know what other companies are in their portfolio that could be competing with you. You know, your investor deck is a very private private document and needs to be treated with really, really kid gloves. And you need to understand the difference of that investor approach.
So a couple of key things that Denise said there. I mean, linking back to what we were talking about a bit earlier in terms of the spray and pray approach, I can never really understand why people would send their investor deck out to all and sundry, no deal room behind it. They just send it out there. They have no idea who those people might send it on to, could send it on to their competitors, they could send it to anybody at all. And then I also will just make the point that as an investor, the first thing that I ever do is I go straight to LinkedIn to look at the founder. And if I can't find their LinkedIn or they don't have one, that's the end. like I said, if you don't have a LinkedIn, I mean, I'm sure that this doesn't apply to many of you on the call, but we do sometimes have people come onto our accelerator and they don't have a LinkedIn profile. It's absolutely key to have people do business. You might not like it, but it's all that there is. And so it is, it is the business tool, and you should have your LinkedIn looking in its best possible shape. And you should be trying to improve your reach on that every single day as you go along. So, Denise, you mentioned there that founders should have other assets. So perhaps you would cover off that and maybe explain what a deal room is in the next
Yeah,
as
no,
the next answer,
no,
please.
yeah, no problem. So there are varying debates over what should be included in an investor deck, and there is a lot of differing views on this. But you really need to be explaining that this is where your storytelling needs to come into its own in terms of your investor deck. You need to be able to explain your value proposition. So, what is it that you're trying to do with your business? You need to be able to explain the market need, the problem that you're solving, and the solution that you're building to solve that problem. And you definitely need to be really, really robust around your numbers in terms of the market size and the target market. There is a debate in terms of how much information you put into an investor deck. But I would say if you can't get through your investor deck in 10 minutes, you've got too much information in there. There is a thing called an appendix that you can, if the investor is keen to dig further, that you can put into. But we can share the key components of an investor deck with you, should you want to start to develop it. But the second thing that I always encourage is a one pager, which is you've got to remember there are busy people in this world. And Mary is a prime example of flying all over the world, may not have time to go through an investor deck from start to finish, and may not have time to read the appendix to get to grips to what the business is. So I always encourage a really, really strong one pager, which gives ultimately a summary of the investment deck, but one page, one full page, and it should outline obviously the revenue model, the route to market, your target customer, and ultimately make sure that your ask is on there of how you're going to what number you're looking to fundraise and what you're going to do with the funds. Now, when I say that to people, trying to get it onto one page is is nearly impossible. It's not, it's a skill, and it just means that you've really, really honed your value proposition and the articulation of how you're going to address the problem that you're solving and how you're going to gain customers. So it does take a lot of work and it does take a lot of focus, but it's an incredibly important document. And the other component, folks, that you can't go out and fundraise for without understanding your valuation. And this is a really, we receive investor decks all the time that give me the number that you're fundraising, but how's the investor going to calculate what money they're putting in for what percentage if the valuation isn't there? So you've got to make sure that you're very, very clear on the valuation. And there are a number of formulas that can drive that depending on the maturity of the business. You don't have to be revenue generative to get to that valuation, and there are a number of tools online that you can use to determine that. But I also the being able to have a really structured email that will go out with that one pager, will go out with your deck when you're at that point in your outreach on LinkedIn. This isn't a I'll just drop this in your desk and I'll hope that you'll read it. You've got to be really structured in the articulation of those emails and how you approach them. So you've got to the point where you've built that persona, you've built the assets that you need in terms of the outreach. And then it's being very mindful that if you get a bite from an investor, the first thing they're going to ask to see is your deal room. And that deal room is, that is your holy grail. And that is to give the investor, venture capital, syndicate, single angel, all of the information that they will need to make sure that they're happy to move forward in terms of reviewing that. Do not open that deal room until you've got a letter of intent or a letter from the investor. Do not open that deal room to anyone. This is this is your Bible. This is your backbone to your business, and it has to have, you know, very, very key components in it at the very minimum. The investor may ask for additional information, but there are key components that need to be in there, like your founding docs for the company, the contracts for any employees that you have, the org chart of your business as it stands and potentially where it's going, profile of any existing investors that you may have, a really, really strong business plan and financial plan. Do not give an investor a deal room without those two key components in place. Any competitor analysis you've done, any quant or qual information that you have in relation to the research that you've put behind the business, any IP assets that you may have, or IP patents that may be pending, your insurances, your licenses, anything. There's a huge amount of work that goes into that deal room. So you're starting with building that persona, building the outreach strategy, getting your assets really clear, but your deal room is the one that's going to make or break it. If you've got them interested by that credibility and professional persona that you've put out there, you've got to deliver in the deal room on the back end as well. So there's quite a lot of work in that. But it's, if you're prepared, like anything, you wouldn't go into a sales meeting and you wouldn't walk up the aisle without doing your due diligence on the person that you're about to say I do to. You have to do exactly the same and look at it exactly the same way in terms of taking on investment from an investor.
Thank you, Denise. I'm just watching the time here. So actually, investor founder relationships do last longer than most marriages. So just keep that in mind as well. Just for anybody that's interested, when I get a business plan, this is the order that I read it in. I read the executive summary, then I read the financials, then I look at the team, then I look at go-to-market. All investors are different, but you should always have your business plan in exactly the same order as everybody else does, because the investor wants to be able to get to the information, and I don't want to flick through 50 pages trying to see where it is. Denise, last question for you before we go to our next breakout. You see thousands of pitch decks. Is there any difference at all in the investor decks that are produced by men and women?
Yeah, huge. The investor decks produced by men always have really, really clear ask around the money. The amount of investor decks that I get that are from women that don't have a number in there. Men are much more aggressive in terms of the number that they're looking to fundraise and how they're going to deploy it. And it's actually probably, in 80% of the cases, it's probably 3 times more than what they need. So you can always negotiate back with an investor. You can't negotiate up. So always ask for more money than you need, and then be able to be in the position to come back. Don't be trying to go, I need 150, but actually I really need 250. Don't shy away from the real numbers. Put the real numbers in the investment deck. And if it is a big number and it seems a bit daunting for you, don't shy away from it. It needs to be out there for everybody to see what the reality of the situation is. Most male teams will lead with the team. So they will lead with the credibility in their investor deck. They will put a team up front. It's not a personal preference for me. I need to know that you've understood the business and you understood your target market, and are very clear on how you're going to deliver before you get to the team. That's one that will probably be debatable, but most male decks lead with the team. In terms of credibility, they give you that, you know, sense of I'm here and I'm, you know, not going away. And the advisory piece, from most women shy away from asking advisors to be on their investment decks, and most men will have every Tom, Dick, and Harry that could potentially support the business around them listed on that investor deck. So they're the money, the team, and the advisory piece are the big differences in those investment decks.
Okay, thank you, Denise. I think we're going to go to our second breakout room, and then we'll come back for a brief Q&A session at the end if anyone's got any burning questions. Okay, over to you.
The second fastest 10 minutes of your life. Our breakout rooms go in the blink of an eye.
That was too quick.
So yeah, always too quick, always too quick. Folks, we're going to throw it open to the floor. If any of you have any questions that you'd like to ask Mary or I. Pauline, do you want to come off mute and go first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Really, really lovely to be here. So my question is, considering you have no network whatsoever, you move to a country or you just, it's your first startup, you have no network, but you want to fundraise, you have the business. Can you tell me personally, like, what would be your first step? You're off this call. What would be your first step in trying to fundraise with an angel, I suppose?
Pauline, where are you based?
In Dublin.
In Dublin. So I would start networking. And trying to find events to start to build that network. And I appreciate I've moved countries. This is country number 4 for me. So I totally get in terms of landing in a strange location and having to start from scratch. But I would encourage you to start with some of the, obviously to join AwakenHub if you're not already a member with us here. But in terms of trying to get close to the ecosystem, from an Irish perspective, it would be pounding the streets, I'm afraid, Pauline. You've probably got a busy couple of months or couple of weeks between now and the end of the year, but I would get yourself to as many networking events as possible. And start to build that network. And I think joining a community like AwakenHub and others on the island and asking for introductions would help and support that from identifying those investors. As I say, most people are pretty explicit from an investor point of view of what they're, I don't know your business at Fine Deeds, Pauline, so I wouldn't be able to, off the top of my head, give you a guidance on where to start, but I would start with getting close to the ecosystem and starting to figure out. Ireland's not very big and it's all very connected and we're all 1 degree separation from the next
3
person.
minutes left, Denise. 3 questions up on the board. Sorry. Katie,
go ahead.
There we go. Hi everyone, thank you so much. I'll keep it quick here. We were in a breakout room there and we just had a great question to Mary about how long it normally takes from initial conversations with an angel investor to getting investment. So just love you to hear your opinions on that and how long a founder should kind of keep protected for that on the journey to launch.
So Denise, I've said it's probably 6 to 12 months for me anyway. Don't know if you've got anything to add to that. So, just so that people don't think you're going to meet an investor today and they're going to invest in your business tomorrow. Maybe your taxable Trevor might, because he's not really that bothered about the businesses, but anybody that cares. What do you think, Denise?
Yeah, I think that's probably right in terms of nurturing the relationship, getting to know them, letting them get to know you, and making sure that they're an appropriate investor for you. You're definitely in that 6 to 12 month mark, yeah, for sure. Rebecca, do you want to go next?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Denise and Mary. It's been very insightful. Just it sounds like there's a lot you need to get ready if you want to be investor ready. Are there like investor coaches or is there a book you should read? Because whilst I've taken a load of notes tonight, it just sounds like there's an awful lot to be thinking about. So is there other tools you can use to be investor ready?
Yeah, there are a lot of tools online, Rebecca, and I can certainly share some with the community. But we are running an investor readiness masterclass in the new year as well, from an AwakenHub perspective. So if you'd like to join that, obviously details of that will be coming out. But there are a lot of resources that you can avail of, and I can certainly share some that we can send out in the follow-up for sure.
Brilliant, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, Ramona.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks very much for the advice so far. This is completely new territory for me, so I'm very grateful for the question. My question really, I suppose, is aligned to what the previous lady had asked and how best it is to actually find a coach for my business and my idea. To bounce ideas off. Is that something that one pays for, or can pay for example, or is it a matter of just networking? I'm just like I'm a legal person and have only really networked in that area. And the second question is about the investment, and if it basically exists for a period of time, whereupon you then actually look for your second investor and you buy out the first investor. I don't really understand it, so could do with a bit of an idea of that. Thank you.
Can I take that, Denise?
Yeah, so I'll answer the first question, Ramona. And I say this very explicitly, folks, be really careful of who you take advice from in relation to your business and your fundraising journey. There are a lot of people that actually do request to be paid for that, but don't have the skills and experience to do that. So I would ask you to be very sure that you get a warm introduction to anybody who's going to advise you on that journey. It is part of the work that I do, but it is very much from an AwakenHub and AwakenAngels perspective, it is part of the work that I do, but there is a lot of bad advice out there, and a lot of bad decks get produced, and a lot of bad outreach strategies get put together without clarity. So Ramona, definitely get a recommendation before you take any advice from anyone. And secondly, the investment journey in terms of taking your first angel, it's not about taking the first angel and then buying out the next. It's those angels that are coming in at that very early stage, as we will be with Awaken Angels Syndicate, is really to go with you on the journey and hopefully to follow the money and to follow your progress and your scalability. So there are resources which I can sense I need to probably pull together from a fundraising perspective that we can share in the follow-up from tonight's event.
Denise, I was just going to say to people as well that our next pitch night for our investor community is open. So if you would like, if all of you on the call that are raising would find it very useful to attend and to watch our 3 women founders pitching that evening, because you learn more by watching how other people do this than trying to figure it out for yourself. So it's on October the 24th at 7 o'clock, and the registration details are on our Awaken Angels website. Last question of the evening goes to the one and only Kira Sheehan.
Thanks, girls. Rockstar performance tonight, by the way, amazing. Very quick question. Where do you start with valuing your business and not making the mistake of undervaluing it? Can you direct me to any particular resources?
Yeah, there is a number of resources, Kira. I'll pull together a resource document that allows there are many models that you can do, and they all come with different pros and cons. I would suggest of the 3 models, do 3 and get the average of the 3. It is the best way. Some of them are very much the models are very much weighted on the financials. Some of them are weighted on the team and the product and the IP. Some of them, so I'll put a link to a resource that you can read through that will give you through. I sense I probably need to put a couple of things together for people to have a read of, and we can send out in the follow-up. But yeah, there are multiple versions and multiple models, and investors use different models depending on their own approach.
Great.
But you can definitely get a very clear valuation by doing 3 and taking the average.
Okay, thanks, Emil.
So anyone that isn't a member of our Awaken Club, you've seen the quality of Denise this evening. So, if you're not a member, you can apply to join through our website as well. Last words to you, Denise.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see many of you lovely new faces that we haven't seen before joining Awaken Club and coming on the journey with Awaken Angels. And if you do want to join Awaken Angels, even as a founder, we still have some sponsored spaces, limited number of sponsored spaces left. So please do check out our AwakenAngelsHQ.com website, and we'll take it from there. So thanks for joining. Have a good evening.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all.
Thank you.
Bye.